Arsenal 1, Manchester United 0. Yes, a Calafiori-headed goal in the 13th minute gives us our first victory of the season, off to a perfect start. But if you watch the game, you might think it wasn't exactly vintage Arsenal. We're going to dive into the game today, review everything that happened, and talk about why it might just be time to be a little bit more patient with Arsenal for a few more weeks at least. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark. I hope you are well. I'm recording this on Tuesday morning, so sort of 2 days since we played Manchester United at Old Trafford in our first game of the season, and I've had time to reflect. I listened to the match on the radio and then have since re-watched the match using the Arsenal player, so have had time to reflect, and I think this is a really interesting performance, and one that we might look back on as pivotal, actually, because our record at Old Trafford in recent years has been terrible. We will come on to that. Before we do start to talk about the game, I just want to say thank you so much. If you are a new listener or a returning listener, thank you for clicking on my podcast. It really does mean the world. And if you want to hear more, make sure you hit the follow button in Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. If you hit follow, you will get podcasts 3 times a week from me straight into your supplier of choice. So make sure you follow. If you're feeling really generous, a 5-star review goes a long way as well. Okay, let's get into it. Obviously a 1-0 victory for Arsenal. Calafiori scoring the goal, a very simple goal. He will not get an easier goal than that all year, maybe in his whole career. But as I mentioned, I was driving at the time and I was listening on the radio. And I just wanted to share this experience because listening on the radio gave a real feeling that we were being entirely overrun by Manchester United. And look, I'm going to give Manchester United some credit. They were the better team. They absolutely were the better team. But I have a maybe controversial hot take in the sense that I don't think you'll see them play many better performances or many better games than that. I do think, having watched it back and comparing it with the radio, that the atmosphere in there, the kind of hype around the new signings, lots of what was going on with Manchester United, and simply the comparison against how bad they were last year has overinflated their performance a touch. And whilst we were pretty poor and we had so much to work on, we still... I'm not sure I can say that we survived that game. Manchester United, better team, I will say that. But we have seen Arsenal play better, I think, and struggle more. So that's just one thing I would say. Maybe that's a slightly controversial take. But when you watch the game back a few days later with a little bit of time and distance and the emotion taken out of it, I mean, I was very stressed listening to it on the radio because the commentators were making everything that Manchester United did seemed like a high opportunity chance, and I was thinking, God, we are being completely overrun. You watch it back 24, 48 hours later, that wasn't the case. And I think there is one really big and clear stat for this. So United had 22 shots in the game in comparison to Arsenal's 9, but they created an XG, according to SofaScore at least this is, of 1.52 XG. For context, Arsenal created 1.31 XG off their 9 shots. What that means is that United didn't create a big chance. I think that's a really important thing to say. Even though they had the Mbuemo header, which was a decent enough chance, but because it's a header, it doesn't generate that much XG. And they had the Cunha opportunity, where Cunha does very, very well, let's be honest. But he's at such a tight angle, it's not a huge chance, and Raya does make a good save. So, sorry. They create an XG per shot of 0.069. Now, that's difficult without context to interpret, but here's the context for you. Arsenal last year, across the whole season, according to Orbinho, their XG per shot was 0.113. So, not quite double, but essentially Arsenal last year, who we were bemoaning a lack of creativity, a lack of really good creation and really solid final third presence, created not quite, but nearly double the better chances than Manchester United did on Sunday. And I think this is where some of the misinterpretation of the performance has gone. Manchester United got the ball back from us a lot because we just passed the ball terribly, and I will come on to that. But what they did with it from there wasn't that high impact. I've already mentioned the Mbeumo chance and the Cunha chance. We'll come on to Raya's role in that in a second, but this was not a team that cut Arsenal apart. Saliba and Gabriel, they did their job really, really well, I thought. Gabriel had one poor moment where Cunha ran past him, but apart from that, I think they did a really good job. And for so many years, we watched environments like that overwhelm Arsenal teams. This was a team who were way below their best that could not be overwhelmed. They were very calm, dealing with the scenario. And look, I said it on the preview pod. We were always going to have to survive a storm. The feeling around Manchester United was positive. They spent £200 million on attackers. They were ready to go into the season with a big bang. And what bigger bang could they get than Arsenal at Old Trafford? It was fantastic for them. It was set up perfectly for them to have a really good day. An Arsenal team of the past would have been overwhelmed in that scenario. Not this team. Saliba, Gabriel, White and Calafiori, I think they did all a really, really good job. We'll talk Declan Rice and Zubamendi in a bit because I don't think they did a great job. But the back four and David Raya were superb in just staying calm. Again, I don't think it's technically their best performance, certainly not from a passing point of view, and maybe not even from a defensive point of view, but they managed the scenario really, really well. And kept Manchester United shooting from distance, shooting from a long way out. Patrick Dorgu's shot, that obviously goes down as like Manchester United will be looking at that and going, oh, inches away. But it's a very low XG chance. Actually, the amount, if he took that shot 100 times, he's probably scoring 1 or 2. So I really don't think the reaction to the United performance has been right. It's been a little bit over-egged, and maybe it's controversial, but I don't think we will see them play that well many more times this season. As for the Arsenal performance, I mentioned already David Raya. He was brilliant, dealt with the couple of good chances Manchester United made. But more importantly, I think kept his focus throughout the game really, really well. A lot of shots coming in at him, 22 shots, for all that I'm saying about, low XG chances, low XG per shot. Actually, David Raya still has to deal with them, so you've got to give him credit. And I think he was rightly the player of the match. The back four, like I say, very, very good. But passing and Rice and Zubamendi in particular, the presence wasn't there. And I think tactically it was really interesting. I said in the preview show, I reckon we will play White and Calafiori as we did and try and bomb them on and try and pull players back to deal with that. Manchester United were not interested in that at all. They took the risk, as I said that they might, to kind of, when we did manage to double up, bring defenders out wide and then fill in, which was risky, but because we weren't at it, meant that they could cheat a little bit with Mbeumo and Cunha, and they created quite a high box, I thought, between Fernandes, Casemiro, Cunha and Mbeumo, and really just outmuscled our midfield there. It was quite clever from them because they weren't drawn into our trap of trying to pull those players back, Cunha and Mbeumo. Well, I guess it would have been Mount as a little bit as well. They weren't drawn into that trap and they outplayed our midfield. And I thought, for the most part, our passing looked really, really sloppy. And that was the primary problem in my head. This wasn't a game where Manchester United kept the ball from us. I think this was because they were quite direct, right? This was a game where I think we kept giving it back to them. For comparison, again, SofaScore stats, Manchester United made 74% of their passes in the final third. Arsenal managed only 61%. The long balls for Manchester United, they were successful with 61%. Arsenal was successful with only 41%. So, look, I think we just kept giving the ball back to them. And this is the major point I want to make in this podcast, I guess. Change takes time. Change absolutely will take time. And yes, we've had pre-season and we've seen lovely football against Athletic Club and, AC Milan looked positive as well at times. But they're pre-season games. We're in the Premier League now. It's fast. It's furious. The teams are up for it. And we are going to try and make a model where we are more direct. We are playing through balls a little bit quicker. And, Mikel Arteta mentioned in his press conference about having times where he wanted his players to play the through ball. We didn't take those opportunities, stuff like that. I think for me, there was a number of things where you could see sometimes runs were made and ignored. Sometimes there was opportunities to make better runs and they weren't made. It was just one problem I think we ran into. We'd win the ball back and you could see Martinelli, Saka, Gyökeres all take off in that kind of new style. Not any of them really going towards the ball to create a bounce pass or help us retain possession. They're all heading towards the goal, running forward. That's fantastic. But they were running straight into the United 3. And I do wonder if Noni Madueke had been given that first half, if we maybe would have had a wider presence, someone who actually wanted to peel out and run. But they were kind of running into a wall of the back three of Manchester United. And look, I think that back three is not up to scratch. But when you're running directly at them, it makes it very hard for Ødegaard, Rice, Zubimendi to put those through balls through. So, yeah, look, we just didn't pass it well enough, and I don't think we ran well enough as well. We didn't create the opportunities, but like I say, change does take time. We've got to be patient with Arsenal here. We've got to remember that this is the first time we've done this in anger, in terms of that kind of more direct style, and we gave the ball away a lot because of that. This was not a pre-season friendly. It meant that we were up against a team who were well up for it, and the crowd was well up for it at Old Trafford as well. However, off the ball, I thought we were decent. I mentioned already the defenders. I think Rice and Zubimendi were a little bit overwhelmed, but when we did get back into our shape, we kind of defended in a 4-5-1 for the majority of the game. Sometimes in a 4-4-2, but a lot of 4-5-1, probably responding to Manchester United's wing-backs. When we did do that, I think we were okay. Arsenal will be way better than that in the rest of the season. We won't come up against that kind of system that often, and I actually think it's ironic because we want to see us change our style. We want to see us let go of a little bit more control and embrace the chaos and go forward and be more direct. I actually think this is the worst game to do that in. One, because of the style that Manchester United play. Actually, if you can keep the ball against Manchester United, you can work it into positions where you're exposing the fact that they don't have typical fullbacks and they don't have a number 6. But actually, because we were playing the direct style, we were just pushing it into their back three, and we weren't able to best them because our running wasn't quite mature enough. So, plus the Old Trafford atmosphere, it was absolutely the worst kind of style, worst kind of event. But yeah, like I say, off the ball, decent. We will play a lot better than that because we will come up against teams who play a back four, and we will come up against teams who aren't quite as hyped and the crowds who aren't quite as hyped. But look, 3 points at Old Trafford is 3 points, no matter how you put it. Before Sunday's game, we had won twice there since 2015. That's incredibly poor, right? So bad. And we have had a really good record against the top 6. I think we are approaching 1,000 days for all of the other 5 teams in the top 6 that we have avoided a defeat against. I think if we avoid this defeat against Liverpool and Manchester City, all of those other 5 teams will be 1,000 days and over that we have not been beaten by one of them. And look, obviously we won yesterday, so it's another good stat, and we have a really good record at home against Manchester United. But going to Old Trafford, the context of it being the first day, the context of their £200 million attacking signings, and the context of us changing how we play, potentially at exactly the wrong time, I think this is a good result. And I think it's one of those ones where you have to put the performance in a box, move it to the side and say, let's forget about that performance, because everything was kind of set up against us and we still managed to get through and win it. And there were still some highlights. My player of the match is David Raya. I'm going to give a sneaky, highly commended to Martin Ødegaard. Some people online might disagree with that, and obviously the Tony Adams crap that came out is really highlighting Martin Ødegaard for, no real reason in my opinion. But I actually thought he was the one player who looked really, really energetic, looked really keen to make things happen. And I think if Saka, Martinelli and Gyökeres had run a little bit more intelligently, as I expect we will see against Leeds, there's no way that will be allowed to continue with Arsenal's coaches, etc. I think we will see a really good continued level of form from Martin Ødegaard, because I think he looked bright and lively and had some good moments on the ball. So fingers crossed that is Martin Ødegaard returning. I guess, and the defence, I'll give a little bit of credit to the defence. The front three and Rice and Zubimendi have to improve. Rice and Zubimendi, look, they did get overrun and out-muscled, and not out-muscled, out-bodied, outnumbered. I don't think that's necessarily just their fault. We maybe could have done something tactically in there earlier to try and get more bodies around them. I think Miles Lewis-Skelly maybe could have come on at half-time, but it is risky. It is risky when you want to bring him into the middle and then leave Gabriel more exposed. It's a difficult balance, and it's a difficult scenario for Arteta. He's trying to implement the more direct style. He'll want to leave Calafiori on. Calafiori was on the yellow card. The changes came later. So, look, I like I say, I'll come back to it. Put that performance in a box. Move it out of the way, because we got the 3 points at a place that we never get 3 points at, really. And there was lots and lots of circumstances that meant we weren't that good. If we play like that against Leeds at home next week, I'll be a lot more concerned. I'll be on here saying, okay, this is not good. And it's interesting, you saw Jamie Carragher speak about Will Havertz start against Liverpool in the third game of the season. He was on Sky Sports talking about that. Gary Neville was saying, no, Gyökeres has to start. It will be really interesting to see how that develops, because Gyökeres didn't have a good day on Sunday because his supply was terrible, right? But we will see. We will absolutely see on that point. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Obviously, we spoke about the over-egging of United's performance, how their chances that they created weren't that high quality and actually were much worse in quality than Arsenal last season, who were criticised so much for that. The shout out to David Raya and his defence for managing the scenario really, really well and dealing with the couple of good chances that United did create. How we've got lots to work on the ball, and how poor our passing was, and some of those stats around how we just gave the ball back to Manchester United. Off the ball, pretty good, but 3 points at United is 3 points. Guys, thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please go and find Arsenal Unfiltered on your podcast platform of choice and just hit follow. It means that you'll get free access to the podcast and coverage 3 times a week. We're obviously back in the season now, so match review podcasts, match preview podcasts will be coming thick and fast, so keep an eye out for that. If you're feeling generous, leave a review, and also come and find me on Blue Sky. Chat on there, Arsenal-Unfiltered at bsky.social.com. All that's left to say is thank you for following, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you very, very soon.